All right, Hare Krishna, and welcome to our Wednesday night reading of the Leadership for a Higher Age of Consciousness. This is your host, Krishna Deva, and we are together again. Hopefully, your day is going well. The week is going better than it was last week, and we left off on, I believe, the source of all beauty. Let me just confirm here. Yep, because we're on chapter 6, and we're getting ready to go into chapter 7. Yep. Okay. We'll read for the next 30 minutes. So hopefully, what is read will enhance, change, transform, upgrade, and heal your situation. The source of all beauty. Another important universal principle is recognize the source of all beauty. The sight of something beautiful can help you appreciate the beauty of all origins. For example, when you see a beautiful painting, you may think, what a clever person to produce this. At first, you may see only the surface manifestation, but as you contemplate this work of art, you might reflect further about what stimulated the artist to produce such an interesting masterpiece. For example, you might think, what does the artist want to express about or through this? The external situation is just a way of producing more introspection, and that introspection allows you to discover a greater number of internal truths and appreciations that add to the quality of your leadership in your life. One of the biggest issues in leadership is the need to become more expert at controlling the senses, especially when they are focused on the opposite sex. The mind is very childish, always running madly after different types of gratification. The following technique can be useful when you see an attractive person of the opposite sex. Instead of becoming bewildered, confused, and losing your equilibrium, control yourself by meditating on the source of this attractiveness. Marvel at the fact that in this single individual resides such captivating beauty or handsomeness, and reflect on how wonderful and sublime that the Creator is to have produced such a being whose pleasing appearance is actually a manifestation of divine energy and creativity. When you recognize the source of beauty in this way, you can become even more appreciative of an attractive person. As a leader, you are required to maintain your equilibrium at all times, going beyond the temptations of the senses that desire objects of gratification in the material world. Your task is to seek deeper experiences and higher connections that are attainable through proper regulation and control of the senses. Pleasure seeking. This issue of sense gratification is related to one of the most important universal principles underlying all phenomena. People are always involved in pleasure seeking. Pleasure seeking is behind all of humanity's multifaceted activities. All sane people have this interest in common. Indeed, human beings pursue specific goals and maintain particular lifestyles mainly because these bring pleasure. The fact that humans are pleasure seeking beings is consistent with the Freudian view that people are constantly motivated by sex. However, sex in this context does not just mean the physical act. Instead, the word has more of a general sense, referring to all forms of pleasurable experiences. In every endeavor, people are either attempting to avoid something negative or move towards something that is positive. In other words, in addition to seek pleasure, everyone is trying to avoid pain. Behavior. Because it is so universal, it serves as a unifying aspect of civilization, transcending all divergent interests or sectarian distinctions. On the brink of the 21st century, many individuals are suffering intensely despite the fact that pleasure seeking occupies much of their mental energy. Despair and suicide are increasing everywhere. People numb themselves with drugs, sex, sports, and other types of stimuli to minimize the hurt. It is as if they were trying to arrange their lives to allow themselves to suffer more peacefully. However, no matter what they do, they will ultimately be in pain if they do not penetrate deeper levels of consciousness and seek higher levels of experience. The desire for higher pleasures and longing go beyond the mundane are inherent in everyone. So again, the desires for higher pleasures and longing go beyond the mundane are inherent in everyone. People have the choice to either expanding their awareness to attain genuine experience of such pleasures, or of using artificial means such as drugs, alcohol, and other props to avoid the issue. As a leader, you can help create an atmosphere in which people begin to experience higher pleasures. God in the heart. Another important universal principle is God is present in everyone's heart, an idea that is discussed at the beginning of this book. God, the presence behind all beings, is guiding and monitoring each person at all times. Therefore, there are no accidents. God runs in a very orderly universe, so orderly that one can set a watch or a calendar by its movements. As people exercise their free will, they create an appearance of accidents, forgetting that each action produces an effect in accordance with immutable laws. Everything occurs according to the will of God. Eventually, human beings learn to understand that nothing happens by chance. Regardless of how someone perceives the situation, a greater master plan is unfolding. From this perspective, even so Number two, the practice of careful scrutiny will encourage you to examine all facets of a particular circumstance, taking in consideration the tensions, problems, and motivations that may not be immediately apparent. Such a perspective allows you to recognize when appearances don't tell the whole story. Number three, everything external has developed from the idea of internal experience that later becomes manifested into the physical world. Careful planning involves breaking issues down into their most elementary components in order to identify their essence. Only then is it possible to build on a solid foundation. Number four, one useful way to become more perceptive about underlying causes and therefore more effective in all endeavors is to identify the common denominators and universal principles in each situation. Universal principles are those basic non-sectarian truths that exist independently of relative human perception that always operate for the benefit of the whole. Number five, one universal principle is each individual is an energy of God. As you interact with people in the performance of your leadership duties, view each of them with concern and affection, remaining undisturbed by any abrasive personality traits. Six, another universal principle is the life force in each person is connected with the life force present in all creation. When you grasp this idea, you will understand that the way to influence the collective force is by channeling and controlling your own life force. Another important universal principle is recognize the source of all beauty. The sight of something beautiful can help you appreciate the beauty of its origin. One of the most important universal principles underlying all phenomena is people are always involved in pleasure seeking. Pleasure seeking is behind all of humanity's multifaceted activities. 9. The desire for higher pleasure and longing to go beyond the mundane are inherent in everyone. People have the choice of expanding their awareness to attain a genuine experience of such pleasures or of using artificial means such as drugs, alcohol, and props to avoid the issue. As a leader, you can help create an atmosphere in which people begin to experience higher pleasures. 10. Another important universal principle is God is present in everyone's heart. God, the presence behind all things, is guiding and monitoring each person at all times. Therefore, there are no accidents. God runs a very orderly universe, so orderly that one can set a watch or a calendar by its movements. Mindsets. Number one, refer to the 10 essential technologies listed at the beginning of this book, focusing especially on number one and number five. Remember to examine each situation carefully to discover the truth beneath any appearance that may exist on the surface. Also, because there are no coincidences, seek the positive lessons inherent in all apparently negative events. That's really important. So, seek positive lessons inherent in all apparently negative events. Number two, try to appreciate the essence or intimate nature of situations. Look for the universal principles to help you establish bridges, develop better communications, and build genuinely. As you seek the common denominator, look for how a higher good can come out of each situation and take steps to make it happen. Continue your practice of seeing everyone as energy of God and appreciate how we are all lovingly connected. Use this approach even with your so-called enemies. Everyone will benefit. So what does this mean? Continue your practice of seeing everyone as the energy of God and appreciate how we're all lovingly connected. Use this approach even with your so-called enemies. Everyone will benefit. Number 5, visualize the connection between your life force and the life force throughout the universe. Since you have access to universal reservoirs of power, intelligence, and love, do not think small. Instead, ask as you purify yourself, think of yourself as also purifying the world, positively affecting the collective world's consciousness. Everything is available to you if you connect properly. Number 6, reflect in a way that keeps you in a constant state of meditation, even with your eyes open. Always examine the situation carefully in order to gain maximum benefit from each interaction. As you observe the beauty in the world, consider how exquisite the source of all beauty must be. Allow this awareness to increase your interest in contacting the Godhead itself, the Creator, the reservoir of all beauty and pleasure. Number 8, remember that the ideal is neither to let your senses run wild through superficial attractions nor to suppress your desires. Instead, you can learn to replace your lower desires with higher ones. By nature, human beings are seekers of altered states of consciousness. However, using drugs and alcohol and other means to experience deeper states of consciousness will ultimately do nothing but increase frustration. Such temporary stimulation can be replaced with ecstasy from the natural consciousness arising activities. Number 10, because there is nothing but God, practice seeing everything as alive, inanimate objects as well as animate objects. This attitude will help you to approach everything in a more open and respectful way. Get a little sip of drink. 1 second. Chapter 7, resolving conflict for the benefit of all. One of the most remarkable paradoxes of modern times involves communication. The capacity to communicate large amounts of information rapidly around the planet has never been greater. Yet, the ability of everyone to communicate clearly and lovingly with others has declined, causing Yet the ability of everyone to communicate clearly and lovingly with others has declined, causing much pain, suffering, and conflict. Hold on 1 second. As global citizens, human beings are being called upon each day to discover and apply new ways of communicating in order to settle differences effectively and bring an end to suffering. To this end, an important function of any leader is to create an atmosphere in which people have the opportunity to address conflicts honestly and resolve them fairly. The traditional view. In the traditional view, conflicts are negative experiences to be avoided. If possible, one side wins and the other side loses, and no one wants to lose. People who perceive conflicts within this win-lose frame of reference frequently tend to ignore, minimize, and override many underlying differences. Parties in dispute may attempt to smooth over diverging points in effort to avoid feeling powerless or lost, or in a determined effort to win. In recent decades, it has become apparent that this approach has not worked. A new understanding of conflict is emerging. One that does not view differences as necessarily negative. Instead, it looks beneath the superficial issues of to the fundamental needs and values being expressed and considers the possibility of win-win situations. Frequently, conflicts subjected to a win-lose approach flare up again later because the underlying issues have not been addressed. The warfare in Bosnia is an extreme case in point. Being fueled by deep-seated, unresolved antagonism and hurt, conflict management, which seeks the short-term benefit of containing conflict by addressing its symptoms and by designating winners and losers, is not enough to ensure lasting peace. Conflict resolution, which probes more deeply to discover the heart of a problem, is required to implement enduring changes. Universal human needs. In the late 20th century, humanity occupies a shared global village, and the inherent needs of human beings are intrinsically similar across all cultures and forms of government. Whereas conflicts over material interests tends to lead to a win-lose outcome. Conflicts over universal human needs such as identity, love, respect, and security do not fit this paradigm. Because the supply of these is unlimited, such needs can be met without depriving others. Effective conflict resolution addresses this level of essential human needs, which are shared by all. The world today could greatly benefit from learning how to identify the fundamental emotional, psychological, and spiritual needs of each culture, going beyond the obvious superficial conflicts to discover the more hidden factors. Such an approach might point out the common elements among cultures and help groups with widely diverging points of view develop a greater appreciation for one another. In conflict between persons or nations, If conflict between persons or nations is ultimately caused by a desire to fulfill fundamental human aspirations rather than by wishes for material gain, then many of the methods societies have developed to manage differences are doomed to failure. Indeed, to the extent that they frustrate the pursuit of human non-material goals, they can actually intensify conflict. Traditional methods of dispute resolution generally involve the determination of each party's material goals and interests and the subsequent imposition of a solution upon both sides, as in a court of law or before an arbitration panel. An alternative has often been to force a resolution through warfare. However, disputes that involve intense feelings, values, and needs are deep rooted and cannot be settled easily by an order from outside authority. The losing party is frequently left with bitter resentment and a sense of importance that does not go away. Many conflicts cannot be settled by any external arrangements that fails to consider the basic human needs of each participant, independently of the material situation. A less materialistic, more spiritual view of human nature is a necessary prerequisite to the effective resolution of differences in the world today, in today's world. This makes a deep-rooted, more integrated approach to conflict resolution. Integrated approach to conflict resolution. This will probably be the last one. This integrated approach to conflict resolution does not accept an outcome that is the result of an incomplete or superficial understanding of the situation. Instead, the solution derives from a proper analysis of all circumstances, including the hidden complexities related to the basic intrinsic human needs of each party. Such needs cannot be dictated or educated, and they cannot be bargained away. If these fundamental needs are ignored or if they become subject to negotiation, then the parties involved will have difficulty resolving that conflict. Even if they do appear to reach accord, the solution will not last because basic human needs are as fundamental as the need for air, food, and water. People cannot live without them. Every human being in this world is motivated by a desire for great knowledge, eternal existence, and unlimited pleasure, and wants to be valued, respected, and loved. Those who help resolve conflicts must always remember that each party in a dispute is pursuing these inherent universal needs. Conflict resolution then becomes a process of finding ways to meet these needs without inflicting serious loss on either side, to attain a lasting, mutual, acceptable end to a conflict. Mediators and facilitators, and even the disputants themselves, can ask the following questions: what kinds of needs are manifesting in this conflict? Which of these needs are basic human needs that cannot be compromised? Which of these needs are more superficial and therefore subject to negotiation? Okay, so I think this is a good ending point. Thank you for your time and attention.